How? 37 factions and the Constitution. To have a just idea of the government before us, and to show that a consolidated one is the object in view, it is necessary not only to examine the plan, but also its history and the politics of its particular friends. The Confederation was formed when great confidence was placed in the voluntary exertions of individuals and of the respective states, and the framers of it, to guard against usurpation, so limited and check the powers that, in many respects, they are inadequate to the exigencies of the Union. We find, therefore, members of Congress urging alterations in the federal system almost as soon as it was adopted. It was early proposed to vest Congress with powers to levy an impost, to regulate trade, etc. But such was known to be the caution of the states in parting with power, that the vestment even of these was proposed to be under several checks and limitations. During the war, the general confusion, and the introduction of paper money, infused in the minds of the people vague ideas respecting government and credit. We expected too much from the return of peace, and of course we have been disappointed. Our governments have been new and unsettled, and several legislatures, by making tender, suspension, and paper money laws, have given just cause of uneasiness to creditors. By these and other causes, several orders of men in the community have been prepared, by degrees, for a change of government, and this very abuse of power in the legislatures, which in some cases has been charged upon the democratic part of the community, has furnished aristocratical men with those very weapons, and those very means with which, in great measure, they are rapidly effecting their favorite object. And should an oppressive government be the consequence of the proposed change, posterity may reproach not only a few overbearing, unprincipled men, but those parties in the states which have misused their powers. The conduct of several legislatures, touching paper money and tender laws, has prepared many honest men for changes in government, which otherwise they would not have thought of when by the evils, on the one hand, and by the secret instigations of artful men on the other, the minds of men were become sufficiently uneasy. A bold step was taken, which is usually followed by a revolution or a civil war. A general convention for mere commercial purposes was moved, for the authors of this measure saw that the people's attention was turned solely to the amendment of the federal system, and that, had the idea of a total change been started, probably no state would have appointed members to the convention. The idea of destroying ultimately the state government and forming one consolidated system could not have been admitted. A convention, therefore, merely for vesting in Congress power to regulate trade was proposed. This was pleasing to the commercial towns, and the landed people had little or no concern about it. In September 1786, a few men from the Middle States met at Annapolis and hastily proposed a convention to be held in May 1787 for the purpose, generally, of amending the Confederation. This was done before the delegates of Massachusetts and of the other states arrived. Still not a word was said about destroying the old Constitution and making a new one. The states, still unsuspecting, and not aware that they were passing the Rubicon, appointed members to the new convention, for the sole and express purpose of revising and amending the Confederation, and probably not one man in 10,000 in the United States, till within these 10 or 12 days, had an idea that the old ship was to be destroyed, and be put to the alternative of embarking in the new ship presented, or of being left in danger of sinking. The states, I believe, universally supposed the convention would report alterations in the Confederation, which would pass an examination in Congress, and after being agreed to there, would be confirmed by all the legislatures, or be rejected. Virginia made a very respectable appointment, and placed at the head of it the first man in America. In this appointment there was a mixture of political characters, but Pennsylvania appointed principally those men who were esteemed aristocratical. Here the favored moment for changing the government was evidently discerned by a few men, who seized it with address. 10 other states appointed, and though they chose men principally connected with commerce and the judicial department, yet they appointed many good Republican characters. Had they all attended, we should now see, I am persuaded, a better system presented. The non-attendance of 8 or 9 men, who were appointed members of the convention, I shall ever consider as a very unfortunate event to the United States. Had they attended, I am pretty clear that the result of the convention would not have had that strong tendency to aristocracy now discernible in every part of the plan. There would not have been so great an accumulation of powers, especially as to the internal police of this country in a few hands, as the Constitution reported proposes to vest in them, the young visionary men, and the consolidating aristocracy would have been more restrained than they have been. 11 states met in the convention, and after 4 months' close attention presented the new Constitution to be adopted or rejected by the people. The uneasy and fickle part of the community may be prepared to receive any form of government, but I presume the enlightened and substantial part will give any constitution presented for their adoption a candid and thorough examination. We shall view the convention with proper respect, and at the same time that we reflect there were men of abilities and integrity in it. We must recollect how disproportionately the democratic and aristocratic parts of the community were represented. Perhaps the judicious friends and opposers of the new Constitution will agree that it is best to let it rely solely on its own merits or be condemned for its own defects. This subject of consolidating the states is new. And because 40 or 50 men have agreed in a system, to suppose the good sense of this country, an enlightened nation, must adopt it without examination, and though in a state of profound peace, without endeavoring to amend those parts they perceive are defective, dangerous to freedom, and destructive of the valuable principles of republican government, is truly humiliating. It is true there may be danger in delay, but there is danger in adopting the system in its present form. And I see the danger in either case will arise principally from the conduct and views of two very unprincipled parties in the United States, two fires, between which the honest and substantial people have long found themselves situated. One party is composed of little insurgents, men in debt, who want no law, and who want a share of the property of others. These are called revelers, Shayites, etc. The other party is composed of a few, but more dangerous men, with their servile dependents. These avariciously grasp at all power and property. You may discover in all the actions of these men an evident dislike to free and equal government, and they will go systematically to work to change, essentially, the forms of government in this country. These are called aristocrats, monarchists, etc. Between these two parties is the weight of the community. The men of middling property, men not in debt on the one hand, and men, on the other, content with republican governments, and not aiming at immense fortunes, offices, and power. In 1786, the little insurgents, the revelers, came forth, invaded the rights of others, and attempted to establish governments according to their wills. Their movements evidently gave encouragement to the other party, which, in 1787, has taken the political field, and with its fashionable dependents, and the tongue and the pen, is endeavoring to establish in a great haste a politer kind of government. These two parties, which will probably be opposed or united as it may suit their interests and views, are really insignificant compared with the solid, free, and independent part of the community. It is not my intention to suggest that either of these parties and the real friends of the proposed Constitution are the same men. The fact is, these aristocrats support and hasten the adoption of the proposed Constitution, merely because they think it is a stepping stone to their favorite object. I think I am well founded in this idea. I think the general politics of these men support it, as well as the common observation among them, that the proffered plan is the best that can be got at present. It will do for a few years and lead to something better. The sensible and judicious part of the community will carefully weigh all these circumstances. They will view the late convention as a respectable body of men. America probably never will see an assembly of men of a like number more respectable. But the members of the convention met, without knowing the sentiments of one man in 10,000 in these states, respecting the new ground taken. Their doings are but the first attempts in the most important scene ever opened, though each individual in the state conventions will not, probably, be so respectable as each individual in the federal convention. Yet, as the state conventions will probably consist of 1,500 or 2,000 men of abilities, and versed in the science of government, collected from all parts of the community and from all orders of men, it must be acknowledged that the weight of respectability will be in them. In them will be collected the solid sense and the real political character of the country. Being revisers of the subject, they will possess peculiar advantages. To say that these conventions ought not to attempt, coolly and deliberately, the revision of the system, or that they cannot amend it, is very foolish or very assuming. The Federal Farmer.